All right, today's lesson is our Argumentative Writing Unit Lesson 3, where we are introducing how to write the introduction paragraph. And let's just review really quickly the 5 paragraphs that you're going to be writing for your argumentative writing essay. Paragraph number 1 is going to be your paragraph 2, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, counterclaim paragraph, and your conclusion paragraph. So today we're going to be focusing on the introduction of your 5 paragraphs. We're going to be focusing just on the introduction paragraph. So the introduction paragraph is going to have 3 specific sentences you're going to be writing. The first one is going to be the lead or the hook. And if you remember back to our other writing units, the lead or the hook is that interesting first sentence that's going to hook your reader in and keep them interested. The second sentence in your introduction is going to be where we introduce the issue. They need to know, your reader needs to know, what is this even about? And you're going to tell them what the 2 sides of the issue are. The third and final sentence in your first paragraph, your introduction paragraph, is finally when you get to introduce your claim, and you get to state your claim. Before that third sentence, they're not going to know what your stance is. And you're going to finally state your claim in sentence number 3. Okay. The issue that I'm going to be modeling for you is, should school be year-round? So I'll give you examples for this issue of should school be year-round, and then you're going to apply that mini lesson to your issue that you're working on, which is pizza healthy for kids? Okay. So in the introduction paragraph, we talked about how sentence 1 is to start with your opening hook or your lead. Guess what you're not going to say in sentence 1? You're not going to say your claim, okay? So you start with your opening hook or lead to get them interested, but you don't state your claim. The lead is always going to be something interesting that's going to hook our reader. It's going to get their attention. It's going to make them want to read more. It should slightly introduce the issue that's going to be discussed, okay? Only because it's going to be about that issue. It's going to connect to the issue in some way. Okay, so there are 6 types of opening hooks, and if you look in your notes that we just glued in, these are in your journal. The 6 types of hooks are right in the dark box. If you forget and you need to look them up, and you also have this mini lesson in your Google Classroom. So 6 types of opening hooks. The first one is a quote from a famous person. The second type of opening hook is an interesting or unusual detail, something that's going to catch their attention. The third type of opening hook is a surprising statistic or a fact. Now, we know if we use a statistic, what should be in that fact? Statistics should have numbers. Good. Statistics should have numbers. It's going to be data. The fourth type of opening hook is going to be a strong statement, and I'll give you some good examples of what that's going to sound like, what I mean when I say a strong statement. It's going to be something you're going to say that's going to make your reader go, oh, it's going to catch their attention. Maybe it might make them want to argue with you. And the fifth type of opening hook is a question, and we've used questions as opening hooks in both of our other types of writing units this year. That was a choice for an opening hook in our narrative writing unit. It was a choice for an opening hook in our research writing unit, our informative writing. And then the last one is an anecdote. And if you remember, we did introduce this in our research writing unit, where you could have started with an anecdote. And an anecdote is just a fancy word for a brief little story. It's not a whole paragraph even. It's just a sentence, maybe 2, where you kind of paint a picture, almost telling a story. So those are the 6 types of opening hooks. I'm just going to have you repeat them for me right now. Number 1 is quote. Number 2 is interesting or unusual detail. Number 3 is surprising statistic or fact. It's going to have numbers. Number 4 is strong statement. Number 5 is a question. Number 6 is an anecdote. Say it one more time. Anecdote. And that's just a brief little story that'll paint a picture in the reader's mind. We're going to go through each one of these right now. Okay. So the first type of hook you could choose today is a quote. And we want it to be a quote from a famous person. That's going to hook your reader if they're like, oh, that person said this fact? So sorry, but your Uncle Max doesn't cut it. You can't use a family member. You can't use your own quote. It's got to be a quote from a famous person. Usually someone who's really recognizable that people, when they see that name, they're going to be like, oh, wow, that person said that. So here's an example of that right now for my issue of should school be year-round. Does anyone recognize who this person is? President Obama. Is he recognizable? Yes. Is he famous? Yes. So that counts as a quote from a famous person. I lead in with a dialogue tag because I'm about to give a quote in quotation marks. So I say, President Obama once said, during the summer, students are losing a lot of what they learn. A longer school year makes sense. So that is a quote from a famous person that starts to introduce my issue. This introduces my issue because he talks about how students learn and then lose what they learn over the summer months, and that having a longer school year would make sense to help them not lose all of that. So it starts to talk about having a longer school year. This is not my claim yet, right? This is just a quote from a famous person. So that's the first type of hook that you could choose. The second type of hook you could choose is just to start with an interesting or unusual detail. According to historians, American farm children once attended school from December to March and mid-May to August. So this is interesting or unusual because is this just like how we are? What months do we go to school? Do we start a school year in December? September through June. And then we have off July and August. So this is interesting because it's totally different than the way our school year is set up now. How does it connect to our issue of should school be year-round? Well, it starts to introduce the idea that we haven't always had school from September to June. In the past, they did the school year very differently. Why would farm children, do you think, be in school from December to March and be off for April and part of May? What do they do? What do farmers do during that time? Well, what are they doing specifically at that early time? Anybody have a garden at home? What are your families doing right now? What? Planting. Right now, they're planting, right? So in the spring, they're planting, and then they go to school from May to August because what's happening then? It's growing, and what do they have to do in August? Harvest the crops. So this just starts to introduce the idea that the school year has not always been September to June, and that it could possibly change for us. Okay, that's an interesting or unusual detail. All right, the third type of hook is to use a surprising statistic or a surprising fact. Okay, so here's an example of that. Experts say that during the summer, students lose approximately 22% of what they learned during the school year. Is that kind of shocking? That if you learn 100% of this knowledge in 6th grade, and then when you get over to 7th grade in September, you're only going to have 78% of it, and you're going to lose 22% of it. Does that seem like you're losing a big chunk of what you learned? Yeah, that's a big chunk. It's kind of surprising. Is that a statistic? Yeah, because it's using that data, those numbers, approximately 22% is what they're losing. Is that connected to the idea of having a longer school year? Why? Right, because it introduces that idea of maybe a longer school year where you don't have the summer off would be helpful. So again, it's hooking them in with something surprising, and it's connecting to what we're talking about with this issue. Fourth type of hook is a strong statement. Okay, a strong statement is going to be something like this. Children should spend the majority of their time reading and writing and less time playing video games and sports. What goes through your mind when you read that? You're like, what do you want to do if you had this person who wrote this here in front of you? What would you want to do, everybody? You would want to argue. Guess what? That's a good opening hook. If you say something that might make your reader want to argue with you, guess what you just did? You just hooked them in. You just made them interested in what you're talking about, because if anyone wants to argue with you, then that means you hooked them. All right? So that's an example of a strong statement where you're going to say something that might be a little controversial, that might make someone want to argue with you. Okay? All right. The fifth type of hook is to start with a question. Here's an example of starting with a question. Just as a reminder, when you start with a question, you're not really asking a question that needs an answer. It's just a question that's going to make someone think, make them start to ponder. How do most Americans feel about the fact that Europeans score higher on their achievement tests? So this makes me think, when I hear this, I'm like, what? Europeans score higher on achievement tests than Americans? And then my brain starts to go to, why? I wonder why they score higher. What do Europeans do differently than Americans? Are they doing something better than us that students are scoring high? You see how it's making me think? Did I give an answer to that question when I read it? No, but it made me kind of think about more questions I have. So if you start with a question as your opening hook, it's going to be predominantly to get your reader really thinking about something. You're not going to start with a question and say, is pizza healthy or unhealthy? Right? That's just asking our question. That's already introducing the topic. We don't want to just come right out and ask that question. You would only ask a question that's going to get them thinking about something to do with the topic. All right, hook number 6 is anecdote. Everyone say it one more time. Anecdote, which is just a mini little story. It's going to paint a picture in the reader's mind. All right, there was a time when summer vacation meant endless lazy days, sitting on the porch and watching the bees pollinate the flowers. That paint a picture in your head, almost like you're reading a book? What did it help you to picture or think of? Okay, it helped you to think about what you do on your summer vacation, right? When you think of summer vacation, you think of relaxing, you think of not having anything to do, you think of being able to do whatever you feel like, right? How does that connect to should the school year be longer? If you have school over the summer months, do you get to have endless lazy days, hanging out, doing whatever you want? No. So that's where it connects to our issue. It's making you think about, wait a minute, those lazy summer days sound great. I don't want to give that up, right? I don't want to give that up. So it's a mini story that kind of paints a picture in the reader's mind. All right. All right. So in your notes, let's just review what the 6 different hooks are. First one is quote. Second one is interesting or unusual detail. Number 3 is surprising statistic or fact. Number 4 is strong statement. Number 5 is question. And number 6 is anecdote. So when you start with your opening hook, you don't state your claim yet, remember, okay? So let me go back to the 6 hooks. These are the 6 hooks. These are in your writing workshop journal, and these are also in this PowerPoint or Google slideshow, which is in your Google Classroom if you want to look. What you're going to do right now is you're going to go back to that introduction paragraph and you're going to write down your opening hook. Okay, so you just wrote your hook, and now we're going to move on to sentence number 2. Okay, so sentence number 2 is where you're going to now introduce what the issue is. You are still not stating your claim. Your opening hook doesn't state the claim. Sentence 2, where you introduce the issue, doesn't state the claim. Okay, and what it does is it just is going to briefly explain whatever the issue or debate is, okay, or any controversy surrounding that issue. And if you need to, you can give a little bit of background information. It might help the reader to understand what this issue is about. So for example, for my issue of should school be year-round, I wrote, much to the public's dismay, many school districts are making the decision to extend the school year. What are the two sides that I've introduced here? The public is not happy about it. Dismay means like their disappointment or their sadness or their unhappiness with it, right? So the public, the regular people, they are what? Mostly what? Against it, right? Much to the public's dismay. You know, the public is unhappy about it. The other side is many school districts are extending the school year. So did I show both sides of the issue? Yes. So when you introduce your issue, you want to say what the two sides of the argument are. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so that's what you're going to do now. You're going to go into sentence number 2, and you're going to introduce your issue. So go back into your paragraph, and you're going to introduce the issue. Sentence number 2, give both sides of the argument. Some people feel this way, some people feel this way. Okay? All right, that's what you're going to do now. Okay, you just wrote your issue statement where you gave two sides of the argument. That's going to really help your reader to know kind of what's being debated here. So what do we have so far? We have the opening hook. My example was, President Obama once said during the summer, students are losing a lot of what they learn. Okay, then we have our issue. Much to the public's dismay, many school districts are making the decision to extend the school year. So I gave the two sides. Public is against it, school districts are for it. And so that was an example of introducing the issue. And now, finally, okay, we did not state our claim in our opening hook. We did not state our claim in sentence 2 where you introduce the issue. But finally, sentence 3, you get to state your claim. Finally. Okay. This sentence should be your thesis statement. So what a thesis statement is you're basically telling the reader what your claim is, and you're promising that if they continue to read your essay, that you're going to prove to them why your claim is true. So the thesis statement lets your reader know what's coming up in the rest of these paragraphs, okay? So we need to always be using the following key words when we state our claim. You might say, oh, here are, there are many reasons why, or there are many reasons why not, or, why something else. You could say, oh, there are disadvantages to this. There are advantages to this. There are benefits to this. There are negatives or positives, okay? So you are going to use some of those keywords to keep it very plain and simple, all right? Here are 3 examples of claims that I could write for my issue of should school be year-round. They're all going to state the same claim. I'm just going to use different words, but they all claim the same thing. There are definite advantages to switching to year-round school. What side am I taking? School should be year-round. There are many benefits to switching to year-round school. What side am I taking? School should be year-round. There are many reasons why year-round school is positive for students. What stance am I taking? School should be year-round. Is my stance very clear? Do you know what side I'm on? But here are 3 different ways I could have said it. What keyword did I use in the first one? Advantages. What keyword did I use in the second one? Benefits. What keywords did I use in the third one? Many reasons why, and that it's positive, okay? Here are my 3 sentences in my introduction paragraph. First, we started with the opening hook. President Obama once said during the summer, students are losing a lot of what they learn. A longer school year makes sense. Then I introduced the issue. Much to the public's dismay, many school districts are making a decision to extend the school year. Then I went on to state my claim. There are definite advantages to switching to year-round school. All right, these are the notes that you have in your journal. You are now working on stating your claim. Down here are all the things that are on the posters, on the front boards. When you write a claim, you're not introducing any evidence. You're not saying I think, I feel, or I believe. Your position must be clear, and you're going to use those keywords like advantages, disadvantages, negative, positive, reasons, benefit. All right. You are now going to write your claim into your introduction paragraph. It's going to be your 3rd sentence, and when you're done, you're going to highlight it.